The quiet man in row 17th air was heavy with noise. Not just from engines or announcements, but from hearts rushing to unknown destinations. Sundar Pichai sat in row 17, quiet as always, with his head gently resting against the window of gate 46B. His eyes moved slowly across the tarmac, following the slow glide of a baggage cart. No one noticed him. And that's how he liked it. He had just finished a series of exhausting meetings in New York and was flying back to California. But something didn't feel right. He had traveled the world, spoken on countless stages, but something in his chest that morning felt tight. Not with stress, but with something he couldn't name. On the other side of the terminal, a different story was unfolding. A woman named Shreya, holding a child no older than 4, stood trembling in front of the check-in counter. Her suitcase was torn, duct tape holding its last breath together. Beside her, a man, tall, worn, and visibly defeated, rubbed his temples in frustration. "We can't let you board without full payment." "Ma'am," the clerk said gently, but firmly. The man, Rohit, looked down at his wife, then at his little boy Aarav, who clutched a toy airplane with one broken wing. "I wired the money this morning," Rohit whispered. "It should have cleared by now." "I understand, sir, but the system hasn't updated. I'm sorry." Their flight to Phoenix was leaving in 40 minutes. Sundar, still seated, heard the commotion. Not the words, just a kind of silence. That follows heartbreak, like a pause between thunderclaps. It was the child's face that drew him in first. He turned slightly and saw Aarav, who had now dropped the toy airplane, its wing shattering completely as it hit the floor. "Dad," the boy said, "is the plane broken like us?" The words hit harder than any press conference Sundar had faced. He stood slowly. "Excuse me," Sundar said to the woman beside him and carefully stepped into the aisle on the way to the check-in desk. He didn't know what he would say. Maybe nothing. Maybe he just needed to witness. Maybe it was the pain in that boy's question as he approached. He heard the agent again. "If you can't pay within the next 10 minutes, we'll have to cancel the reservation." Rohit looked at his wife. "I have nothing left on my cards." "We could call your bank," the agent offered, without hope. Just then, Sundar gently stepped forward. "Hi," he said quietly. "I couldn't help but overhear." "Maybe I can help." Rohit's body stiffened. "Sir, I don't think. I insist," Sundar replied, his voice steady. "I'd like to cover the cost." Shreya's eyes welled up. "We got that. We can't accept that, sir. You don't even know us." "That's okay," Sundar said. "I don't need to." The gate agent looked at Sundar. "Sir, the tickets are over $900, and that's okay." "Please add it to my card." She hesitated. "May I see some ID?" Sundar smiled politely and handed over his wallet. The agent's face shifted the moment she saw the name on the card. Her eyes widened. Her tone changed. I see. Yes, right. Away, sir." Rohit and Shreya watched in stunned silence as the transaction completed. Shreya touched Sundar's arm. "Why would you do this for us?" Sundar paused. "Because someone once did it for me." Just then, a boarding call echoed. Through the terminal, Gate 46B. Last call for Flight 382 to San Jose. But Sundar didn't move. "You should go," Rohit said. "You'll miss your flight." "Maybe I'm not supposed to be on that flight," Sundar replied, half smiling. He looked down at Aarav. "What's your name, buddy?" "Aarav," the boy replied, still clutching the broken toy. "Nice name. Strong name." Sundar reached into his carry-on and pulled out a small box. A sealed, brand new toy plane, one he always carried for good luck. He handed it to the boy. "Planes fly better when someone believes in them." Sundar whispered a RV single quotes as eyes lit up, but before anyone could say more, a loud voice came over. The intercom. "Attention all passengers. Flight 382 to San Jose has been delayed indefinitely due to mechanical issues." Sundar turned back, eyes narrowing slightly. He wasn't one for signs, but something about the moment felt too perfect to be coincidence. "Can we buy you a coffee?" Rohit asked. "It's the least we can do." Sundar looked down at his watch. "Sure," he said. "I'd like that." As the four of them walked toward a small cafe in the corner of the terminal, None of them knew how much their lives were about to change, because what happened next wasn't just about generosity, it was about the secrets people carry, the unseen battles, and how sometimes the right stranger at the right moment isn't a coincidence, it single quotes as a calling. Asterisk, the story behind the Silent Seth Cafe was tucked in a forgotten corner of the terminal, next to a dusty magazine rack and across from a vending machine that hadn't been restocked in weeks. Its lights flickered slightly overhead, and the air smelled faintly of burnt espresso. It wasn't elegant, but it was quiet, away from the bustle and noise. Sundar, Rohit, Shreya, and little Aarav sat at a table meant for two, squeezed in with elbows brushing and chairs uneven on the tiled floor. The boy held his new toy plane like it was made of gold. He whispered softly to it, pretending it could hear him. Sundar watched with a quiet smile, then looked up at Rohit, who had been avoiding eye contact ever since. They sat down. Shreya broke the silence first. Her voice was soft but steady. I hope this isn't taking too much of your time. It isn't, Sundar replied. Sometimes the best use of time is when you stop counting it. There was a stillness after that. Not awkward, but heavy. Like everyone at the table knew something was about to be shared, and they needed to make space for it. It cleared his throat. We didn't expect to be here tonight. Or ever, really. Phoenix wasn't the plan. Sundar tilted his head slightly. What was the plan? To make it in Chicago, Rohit said, rubbing the bridge of his nose. I moved there 2 years ago to work construction. Shreya and Aarav stayed back with their parents in Pune while I sent money home. It was hard, but we were surviving. Then last month, the company folded. The owner disappeared overnight. No warnings, no severance, just empty lockers and silence. He paused, his hand resting on the small of his son's back. I didn't tell her right away, he admitted. I thought I could fix it. I took odd jobs, painting, delivering groceries, anything. But it wasn't enough. 2 weeks ago, her father passed away. It was sudden. I couldn't afford the flight to get back in time. Shreya reached over and gently squeezed her husband's arm. I flew out to bring her and Aarav back here. Rohit continued, his voice cracking. We sold her wedding bangles to pay for the tickets. Phoenix was our backup plan. My cousin said he could find me work there. Nothing big. Just something to keep us going. But when we landed this morning, Shreya added, he didn't pick up the phone. He hasn't called back since. We waited, kept hoping, but now it feels like there's nothing left. Aarav looked up and said softly, but we have the plane now. It was such a simple statement, and yet it cut through everything like light through a storm. Sundar felt something shift inside him. It wasn't just pity, it was recognition. He remembered a time in his own life when things were uncertain, when his family had sacrificed silently for his education, when a single gesture of kindness from a stranger had once changed his path forever. You said earlier, Shreya asked gently, that someone once helped you. What happened? Sundar paused. It wasn't something he talked about often, especially not with strangers, but there was something different about this family. Something raw and honest. I was 17, he began slowly, and I had gotten accepted into a university. India. My family didn't have much. My father worked for a British conglomerate, and he earned just enough to cover our living expenses. No extras, no guarantees. He leaned forward, his fingers tracing the edge of the paper cup on the table. I needed a set of textbooks to begin my first term. They were expensive, almost a month's salary for my father, but I was too proud to ask him. I thought I could figure it out on my own. One afternoon, I was sitting outside the bookstore, just staring at the window display. I don't know how long I was there. He paused, breathing in. A man walked by, an older gentleman. He didn't say much, just asked what I was looking at. I told him I was just passing time. He smiled, nodded, and walked in. 5 minutes later, he came back out, handed me a paper bag, and walked away. Inside were all the textbooks I needed. With a note, it said, "Don't pay it back." Pass it on. I never saw him again. Rohit looked down and his hands tightened into fists on the table. People like that? They're rare. They shouldn't be, Sundar replied. We have more than we need. Many of us. But we forget. We forget how it feels to not have. Choices? Aarav climbed onto his mother's lap and rested his head against her shoulder. His eyelids were drooping. Exhaustion was catching up. Sundar looked at his watch. It was already after 10. Do you have anywhere to stay tonight? He asked quietly. No, Shreya admitted, glancing nervously at Rohit. We were hoping to sleep here in the terminal. At least until morning? Maybe try to call that cousin again. Don't, Sundar said firmly. Come with me, Rohit blinked. Sir, no arguments. There's a hotel across the street. I'll get you a room, meals, warm showers, and a clean bed. Just for tonight. You need rest more than anything. We can't let you do all this, Rohit said again, his voice shaking. You're not letting me, Sundar said. I'm offering. And if you say no, I'll just stay here and sleep beside you. Your choice. Shreya's lips quivered. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then finally she whispered, Thank you, from all of us. Don't thank me, Sundar said. Just get back on your feet. That's all. They walked slowly back to the terminal entrance. Aarav was half asleep, his arms wrapped around Sundar's neck as the CEO carried him like he was his own child. Outside, the night had grown cold. A light drizzle touched the pavement, and the city lights blinked like tired stars as they crossed the road to the hotel. None of them saw the man sitting in a black car parked near the curb. He had a camera in his hand and a familiar face. His eyes narrowed, and a small red light blinked to life on the side of the lens. He zoomed in on Sundar's face. Then on the family. He whispered into a phone, I think we found the story, but it's not what we thought. And then he disappeared into the shadows. The room with one light on the hotel lobby was warm, dimly lit and smelled faintly of old wood and fresh linen. The quiet hum of soft instrumental music played overhead, barely noticeable beneath the low murmur of the night receptionist's voice as he checked them in. Sundar stood patiently at the counter, gently bouncing the sleepy Aarav in his arms. Shreya leaned against Rohit, her face etched with exhaustion and relief. For the first time all day, they weren't surrounded by strangers or airport noise. They were safe. And sometimes safety feels like a miracle. The receptionist handed Sundar 2 key cards. Room 412, 2 queen beds. Breakfast starts at 6. I've added extra towels and a rollaway just in case. Sundar nodded, offering a tired but genuine smile. Thank you. As the elevator climbed to the 4th floor, a soft silence settled over them. Sundar could feel Shreya watching him, not suspiciously, but with the quiet curiosity of someone trying to understand why a powerful man would do something so personal for people he'd never met. When the doors opened, the hallway was long and quiet with the flicker of a single overhead bulb near the far end. Their room was close to the center. Sundar opened the door, flicked on the lights, and stepped aside so the family could enter first. Shreya stopped just inside the doorway. Her eyes scanned the 2 made-up beds, the thick comforters, the clean carpet, and the small kitchenette in the corner. There were no chandeliers, no luxury, just warmth and quiet. And that was enough to make her chest tighten. I can't remember the last time we stayed in a place with heat, she said, her voice barely more than a whisper. Real heat placed there. Tattered suitcase against the wall. He didn't speak, but his eyes lingered on the plush white towels folded neatly on the bathroom counter. He stood there, not moving, as if something inside him was struggling to believe this wasn't a dream that would end the moment he blinked. Sundar knelt beside Aarav, who had finally slipped into full sleep. He gently laid the boy onto one of the beds, removing his shoes and tucking the toy airplane beside him. The boy stirred but didn't wake Dot. Then Sundar turned back to Rohit and Shreya. I'm going to head out. I have a few meetings to handle remotely, but I'll come back tomorrow. Morning, around 8? If that's okay. Rohit nodded. Yes, of course. You've done more than enough. We owe you so much. Sundar raised a hand. You owe me nothing. Just take care of him and each other. As he stepped into the hallway, the door slowly closing. Behind him, Shreya stood quietly near the window. Outside, she could see the terminal building across the road. The reflection of her son's sleeping body shimmered in the glass beside her own face. She whispered a prayer, not to any god in particular, but to the universe. A thank you from one mother's heart to whatever force had brought that stranger to their side. Down in the lobby, Sundar walked through the automatic doors and into the chilled night air. He took a breath, his fingers slipping into his coat pocket. He was just about to call his assistant to reschedule his next virtual meeting when a soft voice came from behind. Double quotes, Mr. Pichai. He turned, startled. A man stood near the parking lot, wearing a dark hoodie and holding something in his hands. A camera. Sorry, the man said quickly. I didn't mean to startle you. I'm a journalist. Sundar frowned. At this hour. I saw what happened at the airport, the man said. I didn't realize it was you until later. I was working on a piece about airport overbookings and families getting stranded, and then I saw you helping that family. I thought maybe it was a lookalike, but now I know it's you. So you've been following us? Sundar asked, not angrily, but with quiet concern. The man stepped forward, lowering his camera. I know how this looks, but please hear me out. I didn't mean to invade anyone's privacy. It's just the way you helped them. Most people in your position wouldn't even look twice. You bought them tickets, gave them shelter, talked to the child like he mattered. I've been a reporter for over 15 years, and I've never seen a moment like that. And now you want to write about it? Sundar asked, more curious than defensive. I want to share it, the man said. But not for clicks or headlines. People need to see this. They need to remember what kindness looks like, especially now. Sundar was silent for a moment. He looked back at the hotel windows, then up at the dark sky above the city. They're not a story, he said finally. They're a family. I understand, the journalist said. But maybe if more people knew how one act of kindness could matter, they'd be more willing to do it themselves. There was something honest in his voice. Something tired. Like a man who'd seen too much of the world's worst and was finally witnessing something good again. Sundar looked him in the eye, then tell it right. Don't make me the hero. Make them the center. Because they are. The journalist nodded. I promise. As Sundar walked away, the man stood in silence, lowering his camera and turning the lens toward the sky. Meanwhile, in room 412, Rohit stood at the foot of the bed. His wife was brushing her hair in the mirror, and their son was curled up under the blankets, breathing softly. The toy airplane sat on the nightstand, its tiny wings outstretched like it was still in flight. Shreya, he said suddenly, his voice low. Yes? I failed you. She turned, startled. Rohit, what are you saying? I promised you a life, and now I don't even have enough left to fix our son's broken toy. I can't even call my own cousin because I'm too ashamed. This isn't what you married into. She stepped forward, took his face in her hands, and spoke with the same quiet strength she'd carried all day. I didn't marry into a promise, Rohit. I married you, your heart, your will. The way you carry pain so no one else has to. You haven't failed me. You've carried us? Rohit's eyes filled, and he rested his forehead against hers. We're going to be okay, she whispered. I don't know how, but I believe it now. I really do. And somewhere in the silence of that room, with only one light still on, a kind of peace settled over them. But while they slept across the city, that article was already being drafted. And when the morning came, everything would change. Not just for them, but for the world watching. Asterisk. The article that woke the world morning broke with a soft orange glow pouring through the thin curtains of room 412. Light crept across the carpet, gently brushing over the curled form of little Aarav, still deep in sleep. The toy airplane rested on the pillow beside him like a quiet guardian. Shreya stirred first. She opened her eyes slowly, then turned her head to find Rohit already awake, sitting upright at the edge of the bed, staring at nothing. His phone lay In his lap, she sat up. What is it? Rohit didn't speak at first. He simply turned the screen toward her. There was an article open on the display. The headline read, "The Stranger in the Terminal, a CEO, a Broken Family, and the Kindness." That shook us all. Beneath it was a photo. It wasn't staged or polished. It was raw, a grainy still from the night before. Sundar kneeling beside Aarav, handing him the toy plane. Their faces weren't posing. They were living a moment, and someone had captured it. SHREY, a single quotes S heart, began to pound. How did they... A reporter, Rohit said quietly. He must have seen everything. As she read the article, her hand flew to her mouth. It told their story, but not in a way that felt exploitative. It was careful, respectful. It didn't paint them as helpless, but as a family fighting through shadows. And Sundar wasn't presented as a savior, but as a man who had simply chosen to stop and care. The piece described the tears, the tension, the plane ticket, the hotel, all of it. But what stood out most were the final lines. We think the world needs leaders who are loud. But maybe what it really needs are leaders who listen, who sit beside the tired, who ask no questions before offering help. The man in the terminal didn't ask for thanks. He just believed. And because of that, something fragile took flight again. We were all witnesses. Now we must be mirrors. As she finished reading, a small chime sounded from Rohit's phone. Then another. And another. Notifications were pouring in. Text messages, missed calls, voicemails, unknown numbers. ROHI scrolled through. I think this is going viral. Before Shreya could reply, there was a soft knock at the door. Dadar? Oh. Still barefoot. And opened it slowly. Standing in the hallway was Sundar, holding a small paper bag and 2 coffee cups. Good morning, he said, with the same calm voice as the night before. She stepped aside, eyes wide. Have you seen it? Seen what? The article. The story. It's everywhere. Sundar walked inside and set the bag on the small table near the window. I had a feeling, he said. The reporter showed up after I left. He asked for permission. I didn't say no. Shreya approached slowly, her voice filled with uncertainty. What happens now? He rests, Sundar said simply. We take it one step at a time. The door closed behind him. They all sat down together, and for a few minutes, no one spoke. There was nothing left to say. They were at the edge of something they couldn't yet see. Something bigger than any of them had imagined. Meanwhile, across the country and the world, the article exploded. Shared on social media, reposted by celebrities, discussed on talk shows. People didn't just read it, they felt it. Because in the sea of negativity that usually flooded timelines, this story was different. It was human. People started asking themselves, when was the last time they had stopped to help someone without a reason? When had they last looked past appearances and seen someone's story? Emails began flooding Sundar's office. People asking how they could help the family. People offering job leads, donations, a place to stay. Offers came in from companies in Phoenix and San Jose. Small tech startups, nonprofits, even 2 global firms reached out, not to Sundar, but to ROHIT. And in a quiet cafe on the bottom floor of the hotel, Sundar sat with Rohit and Shreya later that morning, scrolling through an email inbox he had created just for them. It's overwhelming, Rohit said. All of this, it doesn't feel real. It is, Sundar replied. It's real because you let the world see your truth. And because you didn't give up. That matters. More than you know? Shreya looked out the window. We were invisible yesterday. You weren't invisible, Sundar said. You were just waiting to be seen. Aarav came over to the table, climbing into his father's lap, his hair messy and his eyes still sleepy. He was holding the toy plane. This one flies better than the last, he said. Does it? Sundar asked. Yeah, Aarav said. Because it's not just mine. It belongs to all of us. Rohit smiled, kissed the top of his son's head. and then looked at Sundar. I don't know how to repay you. You don't have to, Sundar said. But if you ever see someone sitting alone at an airport, someone who looks like they're holding everything together with a single thread, just talk to them. Be what someone once was for me. They all sat there for a long time after that, just breathing, watching the morning unfold. But in another corner of the city. Not everyone was watching the story with admiration. In a sleek boardroom, high above the city streets, 3 men in suits stood around a laptop, staring at the article. We didn't authorize this, one of them said, coldly. We can't stop it now, another replied. It's everywhere. Then control it, the third said. We know Sundar's planning something big. He's not just helping a family. He's making a statement. They exchanged glances. Silent, calculating. We need to find out what else he's hiding. And in that moment, the story took a darker turn. Asterisk, what the past leaves behind the hotel hallway was still when Sundar stepped out of his room later that evening. A soft hum came from the soda machine at the end of the corridor, and the carpet. Beneath his shoes muffled every step. He had barely slept. The morning had been filled with interviews, not by choice, but by necessity. Requests were pouring in from journalists, from universities, from global figures, asking to hear the story directly from him. But Sundar hadn't spoken publicly. Not yet, not until he was sure Rohit and Shreya were ready. He walked slowly toward room 412. It had become more than just a room. It felt like a place between the past and the future. A moment suspended in time. He knocked gently. Rohit opened the door with a cautious smile. He looked stronger today. More centered. His shoulders sat a little straighter. Like he had remembered he was allowed to carry himself with pride. Come in, Rohit said. We were just talking. Inside, the room had changed. The beds were made, the curtains drawn open, and on the table were 2 notepads and a pile of job offers Sundar had printed out for them. Shreya sat cross-legged on the bed, flipping through one of the pages. AAV was on the floor, building a little airport out of plastic cups and sugar packets. The toy airplane taxied across the carpet like it knew exactly where to go. Any good news? Sundar asked as he took a seat. Some, Shreya said. A few calls lined up. 2 interviews this week. 1 in Phoenix and 1 remote. Rohit nodded, then glanced down. But something happened this afternoon. What is it? Rohit hesitated, then walked over to the desk and opened his phone. He handed it to Sundar. On the screen was an email. The subject line read, We know your history. Don't become a problem. Sundar frowned, reading the message twice. I don't understand, Shreya said. Why would anyone send this? Because some people don't want stories like yours to be heard, Sundar said quietly. There are businesses, systems, and entire industries built on silence. When you show that the system is broken and worse, when someone from inside the system tries to fix it, it scares them. Rohit sat down slowly. But I don't even know who they are. I've never spoken to a journalist. I've never even posted online. You didn't have to, Sundar said. They're not just threatening you. They're warning me. Shreya's eyes widened. Why? Because this story went farther than anyone expected. It reached people who usually don't care. It crossed lines that are usually kept separate: wealth and poverty, power and humility. And now, someone somewhere is wondering if this is more than just generosity. They think I have an agenda. Rohit shook his head. Do you? Sundar paused. For a long time, then he said, yes. But not the kind they fear. He stood up, walking to the window, watching the distant highway lights blink through the dusk. I've been part of this industry a long time, he said. I've seen how companies celebrate innovation while ignoring inequality. How they launch products that connect people while forgetting the ones who can't afford the connection. I've sat in rooms where people talk about changing the world while stepping over it to reach their next meeting. He turned back to face them, but something changed in me. Not because of fame, not because of success, but because of exhaustion. I got tired of pretending the system works just because it worked for me. His voice dropped. I'm building something. Something that doesn't just serve those who already have. Something for people like you. People who try, who work, who love. Rohit looked up. What are you building? Sundar reached into his coat and pulled out a folded document. He laid it gently on the table. Shreya leaned over and read the words at the top. Project Pathlight underneath. In simple font, it read, an initiative to connect families at the edge of homelessness with direct pathways to employment, housing, and digital education powered not by charity, but by dignity.srey blinked. You were already planning this? Yes, Sundar said. But your story gave it a face, a heart. It reminded me why it matters. Rohit stared at the paper. But why us? Because you reminded me of my father, Sundar said quietly. He used to come home with grease on his hands and never once complained. He used to share one bicycle among 4 family members just so I could get to school. He believed that no matter how little we had, we could still be proud. And when I look at you, I see that same quiet strength. There was silence for a long time. Aarav was now making plain noises, lost in his own world. Then, suddenly, a loud knock startled everyone. Rohit jumped up. Sundar stood still. The knock came again, harder this time. Rohit opened the door just a crack. Standing, there were 2 men in suits. Mr. Rohit Naik? The taller man asked. Yes? We're with the Internal Investigations Division of Homeland Security. We'd like to ask you a few questions. May we come in? Rohit froze. Shreya stood up, eyes wide. Wait, Sundar said, stepping forward. What is this about? The man glanced at him. You are? He's our friend, Shreya said quickly. He's helping us. This doesn't concern you, the man replied coldly. Mr. Naik, we have information that suggests your employment history may include unauthorized work permits. We've also received a flagged report suggesting possible document discrepancies from a former employer. Rohit's knees buckled. That can't be right. I have never lied about anything. I followed every instruction. We're just here to ask questions, the agent said, but his tone was already heavy with assumption. Then ask them here. Sundar said, they have a child asleep inside. You're not taking anyone anywhere tonight. The agent hesitated. Then, seeing Sundar's face more clearly in the light of the hallway, his eyes narrowed. Wait, he said. Yes, Sundar said, and I suggest you proceed carefully. The man stepped back slightly. We'll be in touch. He handed Rohit a card and turned away. His partner following behind. The door closed. Rohit stood. Card still in his hand. The weight of everything crashing down at once. They're going to try to destroy this. He whispered. Maybe, Sundar said, but they won't succeed. How do you know? Sundar looked at him, calm and steady. Because this time, he said, they're not just up against one man. They're up against everyone who read that article and saw themselves in your story. They're up against a mother who stayed strong, a father who never gave up, a boy who believed a broken plane could still fly. They're up against all of U.S. Shreya stepped closer to Rohit and took his hand. Then we fight, she said. Together. Outside, the night deepened. And somewhere in the dark, more knocks were being prepared. More doors would be tested. But inside that hotel room, something stronger had taken root. Something the world couldn't unsee but in the next 24 hours. Everything would come to a head. And not everyone would make it through untouched. What rises from silence dawn broke slowly, as if even the sun hesitated to rise into a world that now held so much weight. The sky was painted in shades of ash and orange, as if nature itself couldn't decide between morning and hope. In room 412, silence sat heavy like mist. No one had really slept. Not deeply. Not peacefully. Not after the knock. Not after the card. Not after the sudden shadow that threatened to undo everything they'd begun to rebuild. Rohit paced slowly between the wall and the window. The agent's card still resting on the table like a threat written in. Shreya sat on the edge of the bed, her hands gripping a half-emptied paper cup of tea that had long gone cold. She hadn't touched it. She just needed something to hold. Sundar stood near the door, staring at his phone, watching the tide of the world shift in real time. He had made one decision during the night, a decision he couldn't walk back. And in a few minutes it would be public. He turned toward the others. It's time, he said. Ro. I stopped pacing. For what? Sundar held up his phone. To tell the whole story. Not just the article, not just the headlines, but everything. Your voices, your truth, unfiltered, honest. Shreya looked up, uncertain. They already think we did something. Wrong. Then we show them what's right, Sundar said. We show them who you really are. Before anyone could reply, the phone in his hand vibrated. The live stream was starting. Sundar took one last breath, looked at them both, then tapped the screen. The camera blinked on. For a moment. The screen showed nothing but his face. Calm. Steady. But behind his eyes was the full weight of a man who understood what power meant and what it should never be used for. Good morning. He began. This isn't a press release. This isn't a company statement. It's not about stocks or strategy. This is about truth. Thousands of people joined the live stream within seconds. Then tens of thousands. Then more. You've read a story about a family, about Rohit, Shreya, and their son, Aarav. A family that lost almost everything. And a story that was meant to be small, a moment in a terminal, but it became something else. Because it reminded people that kindness isn't a press opportunity. It's a responsibility. He paused, letting the silence breathe. What you didn't see, he continued, was what came after. The threats, the warnings, the visit from government agents to intimidate a man who did nothing wrong. We were told not to speak, but silence isn't neutral. It protects the wrong side of history. He turned the camera toward Rohit and Shreya. They hesitated, then nodded at IT stepped forward. His voice shook, but his eyes did not. I came to this country to work, he said. Not to steal, not to cheat, to work. To build a life for my wife, for our son. I followed every rule they gave me. And still it wasn't enough. Shreya stepped beside him. We didn't ask for fame, she said. We didn't want to be symbols. We just wanted a chance. And when someone gave it to us without asking for anything in return, we thought maybe this world was still good. Tears filled her eyes. But then the knock came, and the doubt, and the threats. And we were reminded that some people are more afraid of compassion than of cruelty. The comments section exploded. Messages of support flooded in. People offering jobs, homes, donations, legal counsel, community. And then came something unexpected. Government officials. In real time. During the live stream, a senator posted a statement of support. Then a second and a third. Immigration lawyers publicly offered to represent Rohit pro bono. A former executive from a major tech firm shared his own story of struggling as an undocumented worker in his youth. The internet didn't just react. It rose, and the narrative began to shift, not just for this one family, but for thousands of others watching silently from their own dark corners. Waiting to be seen. Hours later, Sundar ended the live stream. He turned off the camera, then placed the phone on the table. No one spoke for a long time, until Aarav, who had been sitting quietly on the bed with the toy airplane in his lap, looked up and said, Did we win? Rohit knelt beside him. Not yet, he said. But we're flying? 3 weeks later, Rohit stood outside a small office building in Phoenix, holding a folder of paperwork in one hand and a cup of coffee in the other. He was wearing a clean shirt, freshly ironed, with a name badge clipped to his collar. His first official day as a project coordinator for a community development nonprofit had just ended. Inside the car nearby, Shreya smiled as she watched him. Aarav sat in the back seat, scribbling on a notebook with a pen Sundar had given him. He had drawn a plane, a building, and a stick figure holding a heart. A few feet away, Sundar leaned against his own car, talking quietly into a phone. He was coordinating the next steps of Project Pathlight. The beta version was launching in 5 cities. 200 families had already been enrolled, all of it seeded by one story, one terminal. One night, as he ended the call, he looked across. Dala and Rohit, their eyes met. No words were needed. They both smiled, and for the first time in a long time. It wasn't a smile of relief, it was a smile of beginning. Asterisk.